Hello, this is Wazo X Wazo from Udaipur. I'm back in Udaipur, Evil O. And today I'm sitting with somebody very special, Sonika Soni. And I've known Sonika for a long, long time. She used to work at City Palace here in Udaipur, and she worked with the collections there and archiving. But anyway, we've just come out with a new book, so we're very excited.
Yes.
This is the book on the Gauri dancers, my photos and Sonika's essay.
Probably the first collaboration between the two of us.
It's the first collaboration between the two of us.
Yes.
And it has a preface by Pramod Kumar KG,
Yes,
who's
that is
both
important.
of our friends.
Yeah.
Short story by me. But anyway, we're going to talk about how this book came about a little bit today. And maybe you start and just tell a little bit about the tradition of Gauri dancers. What are Gauri dancers? For people who don't know. In Mewar we know, but other places don't.
Okay, so Gauri dancers. So the word Gauri itself is coming from one of the names used for goddess Parvati, Gauri. She's supposed to be Lord Shiva's wife. And but in this particular act, in Gauri dance, there are two female central characters. So one is Gauri, that is Gauri herself, and the other one is Mohini, which is Vishnu, when Vishnu turns himself into this one beautiful female to actually distract one of the... So the basic storyline is about the Shiva and this one demon called Bhasmasur.
I know I did a photo of myself as Mohini one time. But anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So the Mohini and Gauri, so there are two female
Okay.
characters in Gauri. But then I think just after the Gauri herself, this act has been named as Gauri, and it's a beautiful dance form which is like specific to the south of Rajasthan in the Mewar region.
But when we say dance, it's really not a dance. It's not
yeah,
like
it's a dance-based
Kathak
performance, you can say.
It's more of a narration of a story
Story.
with some percussion music,
Yes.
some flute music,
Yes.
and they dance more like hopping almost. I mean, it's not like this really well choreographed dance,
It's
just
not
so
a
people
well
understand.
choreographed dance. There is no written script also. The dialogues are impromptu, and each time, like even the act, each year they repeat it. The dialogues are impromptu. They are always mixing and matching, and then infuse them with the local stories also, and they include in current affairs also in the traditional and mythological stories. So it's a beautiful amalgamation of a lot of things going on.
Yeah, it's a narration. The costuming is incredible. So, you know, this all came about because in 2010, I think I photographed my first Gauri dancer. I was sitting down at Manuj's chai shop near Brampol, and I saw this boy across the street with a cowboy hat and women's bangles, and he was also like strange because he was like, the cowboy hat was very macho, but the bangles were very feminine.
Yes.
And it was like, who is that? And Manuj, my barber, said, oh, it's a Gauri dancer. I didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
So that's how my interest developed, and then since 2010, we just shot so many photos of Gauri dancers, but in my typical style, the portrait style, the hand
yes.
coloring by Rajesh Soni and all of that.
Yeah.
But I still honestly don't know that much about the tradition because I was approaching it purely on a visual level.
Yeah. But what was your first impression, like when you heard about the story? Like they must have told you about like the basic narration behind it. So what was it? What was your first impression of these performers?
I thought it was magical that they were carrying on these stories, and not just the story from the Mahabharata.
Yeah.
I think not just that story, but they were telling local legends from Mewar, because it's such a localized geography of Mewar where this is done. If you go to Jaipur, nobody's heard of Gauri.
Yeah,
you know, because it's not done in Jaipur, it's not done in Jaisalmer, it's not done in Ahmedabad, but it's done in Mewar. So Chittor, Udaipur,
and Dungarpur, and close to the Gujarat border.
right.
And especially, it's actually, why I'll tell you, because it's basically coming from these tribes. So there are only Bhils basically who perform this, and then there are two other tribes, Kametis and Minas. So it's performed only by these three communities. So that's why it's confined to this particular region.
And let's get into a little bit about the origin story. You have quite a few different ideas about the origins of Gauri from your research.
No, it's really interesting because nobody knows where it originated and where exactly it started first of all. But then there are stories, like people like to make their own stories and like to believe stories which are there already floating in the mind. There are more than 5 stories or probably 10, close to 10 stories.
Well,
which
give me
are,
one story. What's a common story of the origin of Gauri?
The origin of the Gauri, the one common story would be that there was this one particular dance form which was performed by the upper caste people, and they had these servants.
The Brahmins.
Right.
Right.
And then one of their, I think somebody who used to work in their farm, and he got to see it. Like, it was such a specific for the Brahmin things that they would never even involve people from other castes to even to see it. But then he got to see it one day and he got influenced, and he started, so he went back to the farm and he started dancing in the farm. And he got, like, he was kind of puzzled because he got into that emotion of dancing and he forgot what he was doing, and he just was dancing wildly in the farm, and by mistake he ruined the crop.
Oh,
and then
no.
when the people came and they saw him dancing crazily, then they was like, what's happening? They was like, oh, I saw you all dancing and I got like influenced and I started dancing. So that at that the Brahmins were like so specific and peculiar about this thing that, oh, it was their thing. So they thought that now it has been performed by somebody who is not from their caste, it's become impure.
It was
So
corrupted.
It was corrupted,
Right.
yeah. So they then decided to not perform it anymore, and they gave it to the community from which that fellow belonged.
You give it to the Beals.
Beals
To the
and the
Beal,
Metis,
the Beal
yes.
tribe.
Yeah. So
One
that
thing
was
we learned in researching Gauri, which Sonika did the research, but I know from living in Udaipur, very little seems to be known about it. I think this is the first book in
Yes.
English about Gauri, as
Yeah,
far as
that's
we
true.
know.
Yeah,
There have
yeah.
been some little pamphlets on it, but this is the first book. And there is some literature in Mewar
In Mewar language and in
Hindi
Hindi also. there is this-
academic
yeah.
papers, but there isn't much available, so that's one reason we decided to go ahead and do the book. But it's very enigmatic. We don't
Yeah,
know
it
that
is.
much
Be-
about
Yeah,
it.
because nobody knows, and also because there are a lot of superstitions attached to the performance also. Because these people, when they perform, they believe that they are not exactly possessed, but then they have like there is a divine intervention, they are connected with the other worlds also. So these people, only the guys perform from the tribes, all the 3 tribes, only the men perform, and they are fasting for the 40 days. And it actually starts the 2nd day of Raksha Bandhan and it goes on for 40 days. And for the 40 days they all fast, they eat only one time, 1 meal a day, and they don't drink. Usually they are like heavily into drinking. They're known for it. They rather make also their own country liquor, but they don't drink for these 40 days. And they are out of their homes, they do not stay in their houses, they do not sleep on proper mattresses, they sleep on the floor, and they're like always traveling in groups, and they're going from one village to other. And the venues, they basically choose a venue, so it's like by an unwritten rule, they choose a village in which one of their daughters have been married. So if they're going in a village, the receiving village people, they actually welcome them. And then they kind of arrange for their stay and for their one-time meal that they eat. So the thing is, for these 40 days, I believe that they're worshipping, they have to please Shiva. So that's why they do this performance. And there are a lot of superstitions related to it. I think that's what makes it more enigmatic.
I think one thing that attracted to me culturally was because of the fact it is only men performing this. A lot of young men, a lot of young boys, and they're dressing so many times in female characters. So they're dressing up as gods, goddesses, and women.
Yeah.
And so these young, basically farm boys and village boys from rural villages in Rajasthan are putting on makeup and putting on saris and all sparkle, glitter on it. And it's so fun, and they really like get into it. I mean, they really enjoy. There's no inhibition whatsoever.
No inhibition at all.
And they're not professional.
No, because they don't do it for
actors.
an audience as such, you see.
Right.
See, the thing is, this consciousness would come if they're performing for somebody. They're performing only for their God.
Right.
So the devotional aspect is the core to this performance.
Right.
They are totally performing for pleasing their deities. That's
And
it.
the original deity is the goddess
The
Gauri.
God, Gauri and Shiva and the wife.
And this is the whole thing we were talking about before we started doing this video, is that the name, it's like, I say Gauri, which is Gauri.
Okay.
Some people spell Gawri.
And Gavri and Gavari.
Yeah, Gavri and Gavari. And the whole thing is like, my ears, because I've lived in Udaipur for 12 years or whatever, to me the villagers, the performers themselves, all the locals say Gauri. It's the Gauri dance. But you go up a little higher in the more middle class people will say Gavri. Gavri, and they will insist it's written Gavri with the V. And then I find academics try to say Gavari many times, especially academics from Delhi. It's Gavari, you know. But I go with what the local people say because
it's their dance performance.
Right,
it's their
right.
thing. It's not for anybody else to. So the thing is, we can have our own interpretations after having known, after having seen the performance. And it's open. So the thing is, this whole act now, because it's still on a purer ground, because there is hardly any amalgamation to it. So the thing is, there is still no, say, like a government help or aid or from anybody. There are recently a few NGOs who have started coming and, you know, looking into the sort of conditions in which they are performing and what they are performing, and, you know, getting into the history and
and that's concerned me a
background.
little, rightly or wrongly. I'm a little concerned about the NGOs getting involved, because the other thing that was beautiful about this, it was not performed for the tourists. This was not a tourist event at all. This is very localized, only in the villages. They do it for villagers. Villagers doing it for villagers. And now, the past 3 years, we have NGOs involved and the government, and they're beginning to do it at Badr Ki Haveli and places in Udaipur. So they shorten a day-long event into 1 hour performance. So you know right there's going to be some corruption happening.
Absolutely.
Like happened with Kathakali in Kerala.
Yeah.
So I'm a little worried about what might, I mean, it might be for the good, it might be for the worse. We don't know, time will tell. So I think it's good that we did the book now at this point of time, before there's any like real changes
Exactly.
happening.
And then the thing is, we are not touching the performance, we are just presenting it the way it is.
Right.
And I think like your photographs also, they do a justice to it, like at one level, because you are not making them do anything which, you know, they won't do. You are just like making them stand and pose as they are.
Right.
So I think
And
it's
to me-
basically documenting.
To me, the painted backdrops add that element of fantasy, and Gauri
Fantasy,
is all about fantasy. You know, it's role playing. It's
role-playing,
entering a
absolutely.
mystical, magical world. So the backdrops fit that very nicely.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't want to toot my own horn too much. I think the other thing about this book is that, you know, I know some people will read it and they say, oh, but this isn't right, or you forgot to mention this, or blah, you know, this always happens.
Yeah.
But to me, we see this as, it's a first attempt to put the information out there,
Yes,
and
exactly.
maybe it will inspire other people to
yeah.
use this as a springboard to work on future volumes at some other point
And I'm
in time.
basically like open for ideas, because this is just the first attempt. So, and also it's not like a highly scholarly work. It's just like putting in history and background, that's it.
Well, you grew up in Bhilwara, so you grew up in Gauri territory, basically.
Gauri territory. Surprisingly, in the main city, it wasn't performed from where I came, but it was performed much in Udaipur and around the areas. So, like, especially at like, you know, some of the years when my mom would bring us for these, for Rakhi.
And who
So
were...
then,
who
my
were-
mom is from Udaipur.
Your mom is from Udaipur.
Yeah, so my
But-
dad's side.
But you had a connection.
Yeah, definitely.
But who were the two scholars that you talked to about
Oh yeah,
this
so
in Udaipur?
so there's this fellow called he's a senior scholar, Shri Mahendraji Bhanawat. He's the only one who has worked on Gauri, and so not just Gauri, but he actually picks up a lot of these folk traditions from entire Rajasthan. So, for example, there's this Leela in the Marwad region. So he actually researched on a lot of these dance, and then like for example, fur paintings which are coming from so the fur tradition of how the Bopas perform in front of that painted backdrop. So he picks up a lot of these folk and say like ritualistic and tribal sort of dance-based performances, and he researched on them. So that's an interesting book actually. It covers a lot on Gauri, but then unfortunately it's written in a way that a lot of people won't be able to sort of decode it, because it includes a lot. It makes sense because it includes a lot of vernacular, like a vocabulary in it, but then you need to be informed about the language and the kind of words he's using in the book.
So tonight we go for our book launch here in Udaipur, the first launch. We're launching the first time in Udaipur.
First time in Udaipur.
And it'll go on. This book is being handled by Mappin, by the way, so it'll be in the fall, autumn Mappin catalog. So look for it, plugging our product here, product placement. So anyway, thank you so much. I think we should call it quits because I don't like these to get too long.
Too long, yes.
Okay.
And rest you can read in the book, please.
Right, you can
Yeah.
read in the book. So thank you very much.
Thank
This
you.
is Sonika
And thank you
Soni
very much for
Sonika
giving me
Soni.
the opportunity.
and Evil O from Udaipur. Bye.